That about the J6 people too, though, right? That's what they're going to say on the other side. That is weaponized also.
I'm not referring to that. I'm talking about the New York trial, and now the Democrats on our side there were some that were gleeful, calling it like now he's a convicted felon and those things, and now for our party we were talking about criminal justice, and we are now talking about second chances, and now all of a sudden now you're like, well, he's a convicted felon and all these things. And now clearly, again, both of those trials, the Hunter Biden one and the trial in New York for Trump, that was politically motivated, and those kinds of charges would have never been brought unless one side could realize that they could weaponize that.
It's his son, after all, and people do have sympathy for that. But a lot of people are angry with him about it. What do you say?
Oh, well, I think it's undeniable that the case against Hunter Biden was really politically motivated, but I also think it's true that the trial in New York for Trump that was political as well too. Now it's that, and in both cases, I think a pardon is appropriate, and I really think collectively, America's confidence in these kinds of institutions have been damaged by these kinds of cases. And we cannot allow these kinds of institutions to be weaponized against our political opponents. And it's very clear both trials were politically motivated and weaponized that on the other side.
Welcome back to AllStarBuzz. Thank you for joining us. Before we start, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We are on our way to 10,000 subscribers. Now, let's begin. John Fetterman didn't walk into The View expecting a war, but by the time he walked out, he was preparing for battle not in the court of public opinion, but in an actual courtroom. It all started with what should have been a typical guest appearance. Fetterman, the outspoken and instantly recognizable Democratic senator from Pennsylvania, sat across from the familiar faces of one of America's most watched daytime talk shows.
In a new Netflix documentary series about New York Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers, he said he's heartbroken about friends and family cutting him off for his controversial political views and conspiracy theories. And a lot of Americans can relate to this, especially after this last election. So, do you think it happens everywhere?
What I recall about him is when he was asked about the COVID-19 pandemic, during the height of the pandemic, when people had lost loved ones, when people's family members were missing from their Thanksgiving table, like my table, he said, "I'm immunized." And as it turns out, he was not. He had done his own research. He has his Google MD like I do. And I think he said he was allergic to something in the vaccine, but he had COVID and he was in a huddle with his teammates. And I think people felt like, wow, you don't care. You're not your brother's keeper.
This could really, this could really turn me against
a morality.
Are you telling me?
The View, known for its loud voices, sharp takes, and viral clashes, has never shied away from stirring the pot. But this time, something went very wrong. During a segment that was supposed to be about politics and national discourse, one comment directed at Fetterman crossed the line, and not just according to Fetterman. Behind the scenes, legal teams began to move, and a lawsuit was quietly drafted. Within days, headlines exploded. John Fetterman is suing The View's Sunny Hostin and the show's producers. This isn't a celebrity spat or some political grandstanding. Fetterman alleges that the comment wasn't just inappropriate, was damaging, reckless, and defamatory, and he's not treating it as a personal insult. He's treating it as a legal violation. A public figure known for his unapologetic tone and progressive stances is now turning that same energy toward holding daytime television accountable. This moment marks a collision between politics and media that neither side can ignore. And as the lawsuit takes shape, so does the spotlight bright, unrelenting, and aimed directly at Sunny Hostin and the producers of The View. For years, John Fetterman has built a reputation on being fearless. Whether he's walking the Senate floor in a hoodie or pushing for prison reform, he's never backed down from controversy. And this time is no different. He's not just angry about what was said, he's taking a stand for something much bigger. In Fetterman's eyes, this isn't about personal pride or some TV drama. It's about drawing a line. a line between public discourse and defamation, between healthy debate and character assassination. And he believes The View crossed that line on national television. This is where the story gets bigger than one man. Fetterman isn't just calling out Sunny Hostin. He's putting the entire show and its producers in notice. And let's be clear, The View is no lightweight. It's one of the most powerful platforms in American media, with millions of viewers and a long history of shaping public opinion. But Fetterman's not backing down. He's suing not just Hostin, but also the producers, accusing them of allowing the segment to spiral out of control. For him, the issue isn't just what was said, it's that no one stepped in. No one hit pause. No one took responsibility. That silence, that lack of accountability, is what he's challenging. By filing this lawsuit, Fetterman is aiming a spotlight at what he sees as a pattern-reckless commentary that goes unchecked under the guise of free speech. And in doing so, he's forcing a national conversation. What happens when media power goes unchallenged? Who holds the gatekeepers accountable? He's not asking those questions quietly, he's asking them in court. The View has always thrived on chaos-fiery debates, clashing opinions, and hosts who rarely hold back. It's part of what makes the show magnetic. But that same unfiltered energy now finds itself under legal fire, as this lawsuit takes aim not only at Sunny Hostin, but also at the very foundation the show is built on. This isn't just another headline for The View to brush off. Over the years, the show has weathered criticism for everything from awkward interviews to on-air shouting matches. But this time, the stakes are different, because if Fetterman's claims hold up in court, the show won't just face bad press, it could face serious consequences. Sunny Hostin, known for her sharp commentary and confident delivery, is no stranger to backlash. But she now stands at the center of a legal firestorm. Her words, whatever they were during that episode, have triggered a lawsuit that questions more than just their intent. It questions whether she, and the show as a whole, crossed into dangerous territory. The View has built its legacy on being provocative, but Fetterman is arguing that provocation without responsibility is a problem. And he's pointing fingers not only at the person who spoke, but at the people who allowed it to air. That includes producers, editors, and network decision-makers. This lawsuit is beginning to feel like more than just one legal dispute. It's a challenge to how talk shows operate. It's putting pressure on everyone behind the scenes, the ones who usually stay out of the spotlight. And now, they may have to answer for what unfolded under their watch. Sunny Hostin has never been afraid to speak her mind. That boldness is what earned her a seat at The View's table and what's kept viewers coming back. She's sharp, fearless, and unapologetic. But now, that same candor could cost her more than just public backlash. It could redefine her career. The lawsuit filed by John Fetterman doesn't just criticize Hostin's tone or choice of words, it claims her remarks caused real harm. While the specifics haven't been released due to ongoing legal proceedings, what's clear is this: Fetterman believes her words weren't just strong, they were defamatory. And now the court will decide whether that opinion crossed into something legally actionable. This puts Hostin in a very unfamiliar position, not as the commentator, but as the one being commented on. And for someone who's used to steering debates, that's a jarring shift. If the lawsuit succeeds, it could change how public figures like her approach controversial discussions. Not just on The View, but across all daytime and primetime talk platforms. But let's not forget, this isn't just about one comment or one lawsuit. Fetterman is forcing the media world to pause and take a hard look at its own reflection. Sunny Hostin, with all her influence and visibility, is at the epicenter of a case that could impact how media handles political guests, controversial opinions, and live broadcasts. For Hostin, this isn't just about defending herself, it's about what kind of precedent this sets. And depending on the outcome, it could send shockwaves through the entire industry. Because if even The View isn't untouchable, no media platform is. While Sunny Hostin is facing the spotlight, the producers of The View aren't being spared either. Fetterman's lawsuit doesn't just call out the person who spoke it, zeroes in on the people who allowed it to happen. The ones behind the cameras making the final call on what reaches millions of viewers. According to Fetterman, the responsibility doesn't end with Hostin. He argues that the producers failed to step in, failed to apply any editorial caution, and ultimately allowed damaging remarks to be aired unchecked. To him, that's not just a lapse in judgment, it's a systemic failure. The lawsuit suggests that the View's team enabled an environment where a serious line could be crossed on live television without anyone taking the reins. Fetterman sees this not as an isolated incident, but as a reflection of how media producers sometimes prioritize shock value over responsibility. This raises a critical question. What duty do producers have when the content turns volatile? Are they just facilitators of debate or gatekeepers of public discourse? Fetterman's position is clear. If you have the power to shape a national conversation, you also bear the weight of ensuring it doesn't do unnecessary harm. By naming the producers in the lawsuit, he's forcing media networks to reconsider how they handle tense political segments. It's no longer enough to say, "We didn't know it would go that far." Fetterman is arguing that media leaders should anticipate the consequences of what they air and be held accountable when those consequences are destructive. And that brings this legal battle into uncharted territory, because if the courts agree with Fetterman, it won't just affect The View. It could change how every major talk show, news panel, and political segment operates moving forward. So why does this story matter beyond the headlines, beyond the lawsuit, beyond the names involved? Because this isn't just about John Fetterman or Sunny Hostin. It's about something much bigger: the relationship between media and accountability. Every day, millions of people tune in to shows like The View not just to be entertained, but to be informed. These platforms shape opinions, influence votes, and help set the national conversation. When something goes wrong, when a public figure feels misrepresented or attacked, it's no longer just a personal issue, it becomes a public one. Fetterman isn't just defending himself in court, he's making a broader statement that media platforms must be held responsible for the words they broadcast, especially when those words have the power to damage reputations and sway public trust. This case is now part of a much larger conversation about media ethics. In an age where narratives spread faster than facts and where talk shows blur the lines between opinion and journalism, where do we draw the line? Who gets to say what's fair commentary and what's harmful misinformation? For Fetterman, the answer is clear. That line has to be drawn by accountability. And if it takes a lawsuit to force that accountability, he's willing to take that step not just for himself, but to set a precedent. Because at the heart of all this is a fundamental question. When media crosses the line, who has the power and the courage to push back? Right now, Fetterman is showing that he's not just willing to speak up, he's willing to fight. John Fetterman has made it clear this isn't just about words exchanged on a talk show couch, it's about principle. For him, the moment on The View was a symptom of a much deeper issue in modern media: the unchecked power to influence perception without facing consequences when things go wrong. In his view, the producers and hosts of The View fail to uphold a basic standard respecting the weight of their platform. When a public figure is invited on national television, the expectation is clear: challenge them, question them, debate them, but don't use the platform to smear them. Fetterman believes that line was crossed. He's not looking for a quiet settlement or a half-hearted apology. He's using this moment to send a very public, very loud message to media outlets across the board. You don't get to hide behind ratings. You don't get to call it just opinion when it turns into character destruction. This lawsuit, in his eyes, is about restoring a sense of balance, reminding media giants that with influence comes responsibility. And when they fail to handle that responsibility with care, there should be real consequences. In an era where misinformation can circle the internet in seconds, where a damaging clip can go viral before the facts are clear, Fetterman is trying to anchor the conversation back in reality. His move is strategic. It's calculated, but above all, it's principled. He's not just defending his own name, he's challenging a culture that too often rewards the loudest voices without holding them accountable for the echoes they leave behind. Let's take a closer look at Sunny Hostin herself. She's been a defining voice on The View for years, sharp, confident, and unafraid to take a stand. Her commentary has sparked national conversations, drawn both praise and outrage, and helped shape the show's bold identity. But this time, that boldness might have gone a step too far. Fetterman's lawsuit puts her words under a microscope. It's no longer about whether what she said was popular or controversial, it's about whether it was legally and ethically acceptable. Did she express an opinion within her rights, or did her remarks cross into defamation? That's the central question the court will be forced to answer. This isn't just about one episode, it's about the power of voice in a space where millions are listening. Hostin, with her influence and audience reach, is now the example in a conversation about what public figures are allowed to say and when those words might cause real damage. Her outspoken style, once seen as her greatest strength, is now being re-examined through a legal lens. And this could have ripple effects far beyond her own career. Because if the court rules in favor of Fetterman, it sends a message. Not even the most seasoned, high-profile commentators are immune to consequences when their words go too far. That's why this moment is so pivotal. It's no longer just about what Sunny Hostin said, it's about whether public figures with massive platforms can continue speaking freely without facing accountability. And as this case unfolds, it could redefine the boundaries of free speech in the world of broadcast media. This lawsuit doesn't just shine a light on the individuals involved, it challenges the entire structure of daytime television. Specifically, it forces us to confront the responsibilities of producers who often operate behind the scenes. They're the ones who approve segments, manage tone, and decide what gets aired. And in Fetterman's eyes, they failed. He believes The View's producers should have stepped in the moment things went sideways. Instead, they allowed the moment to play out, unchecked, on live television, leaving him exposed to what he calls a damaging and unfair portrayal. The lawsuit accuses them of negligence, not just for allowing the remarks to air, but for creating an environment where such moments can happen without warning or consequence. To Fetterman, that failure isn't just about his personal experience, it's a sign of a systemic issue in media. A pattern where the chase for ratings and viral clips takes priority over fairness, balance, and truth. He's arguing that producers aren't just technicians, they're decision makers with a moral obligation to control the narrative responsibly. And if they don't, they should be held accountable not just in public opinion, but in court. This turns up the heat on networks across the board. If Fetterman wins or even forces a serious legal review, other shows will be watching closely. Because suddenly, those behind-the-scenes decisions, what gets cut, what gets aired, how guests are treated, could come with very real legal consequences. This lawsuit could become a wake-up call, one that reshapes how daytime television operates and redefines the expectations placed on those who run the show from the shadows. Now, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture because this story goes far beyond one senator and one TV show. At its core, it's about the fragile balance between free speech and defamation, and what happens when media platforms forget the weight their words can carry. In a democracy, free speech is sacred. It fuels debate, allows dissent, and drives progress. Without it, public discourse withers. But free speech isn't a blank check to say anything without consequence, especially when it comes from a platform as powerful as The View. When that speech misleads, misrepresents, or outright harms, the line between free expression and reckless behavior becomes dangerously thin. That's exactly what John Fetterman is putting on trial. Not just Sunny Hostin's comment, but the broader media culture that rewards fast takes, viral sound bites, and hot-button segments over truth and fairness. And in this case, Fetterman is drawing a hard line. If the media crosses it, there must be accountability. In today's world, one comment can spark outrage, shift narratives, or destroy reputations in hours. The stakes are higher than ever. And while hosts may move on to the next story, the damage left behind doesn't always fade so easily. This is why Fetterman's legal move matters. It's not about silencing opinions, it's about setting boundaries. Boundaries that protect people from being reduced to headlines. Boundaries that remind media figures that with influence comes responsibility. And if those boundaries are ignored, there will be consequences not just in reputation, but in law. Fetterman's lawsuit is more than just a reaction, it's a challenge to an entire industry. He's not just asking for an apology or a retraction. He's demanding that media outlets recognize the real-world consequences of their content, especially when that content involves public figures, complex issues, and millions of viewers. This moment forces all of us to reconsider how we engage with media. We live in a world where clips are shared out of context, where commentary is disguised as news, and where viral moments often matter more than accuracy. And Fetterman is standing up to say, enough. He's not only defending his own reputation, he's holding up a mirror to the industry and asking, what do we really value? Are we building platforms for meaningful conversations? Or are we just feeding outrage machines? And when things go too far, who pays the price? By taking legal action, Fetterman is forcing that conversation into the open. He's showing that public figures don't have to just absorb media attacks in silence. They can fight back. And in doing so, he's redefining the power dynamic between media platforms and the people they cover. This lawsuit could set a new standard, one where producers and hosts think twice before letting emotion override ethics. One where platforms are forced to weigh the long-term damage of a segment, not just its short-term buzz. It's a bold move. And whether you agree with him or not, Fetterman is forcing a much-needed conversation. One that could reshape not just how talk shows operate, but how we all consume and trust media in the digital age. As this case continues to unfold, the ripple effects are already being felt far beyond the set of The View. Legal analysts, media critics, and public figures are all watching closely, because what happens next could change the rules of engagement for television, journalism, and political discourse alike. John Fetterman's lawsuit puts the question front and center. Can public figures hold media platforms accountable for their words? And if so, where is the line drawn between a strong opinion and a damaging falsehood? These aren't abstract questions, they're now part of a real legal battle that could set new precedents in how media is regulated and how reputations are protected. If Fetterman wins, it could signal a dramatic shift in how shows like The View handle their guests, structure their debates, and train their hosts. Media producers might need to implement stricter editorial oversight, legal review processes, or even rethink how political conversations are framed in front of a national audience. On the other hand, if the lawsuit is dismissed, it may send the message that public figures are fair game, no matter how personal or harmful the commentary might become. Either way, the outcome will be felt across the media landscape. What makes this case even more fascinating is that it lives at the crossroads of three powerful forces: politics, media, and law. And at the heart of it all is one bold senator who's decided to say enough and draw a line where many others have remained silent. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one!